As I told you, hypothalamus means, as the name suggests, anything below the thalamus. It is separated from thalamus by hypothalamic sulcus. You have to remember the 3 zones. It also has got various nuclei. The functional zones, if I start from anterior to posterior region, it has got anterior, tuberal and posterior zones. Now, anterior, tuberal and posterior zones is further divided into medial and lateral zones. This medial and lateral zones has further several nuclei. So, 3 zones are there: anterior, tuberal and posterior. Each zone is having 2 zones, that is medial and lateral, and each having their nuclei. So, we will come to the anterior region nuclei. If you see this table, you have to remember, yes, these are important nuclei. Supraoptic nuclei of the anterior region and paraventricular nuclei in the anterior region. These 2 nuclei secretes ADH, antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin. Now, specifically if the question is asked from which nuclei, both secretes antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin, but ADH is secreted maximally or in maximum amount from supraoptic nucleus, and oxytocin is secreted maximally from the paraventricular nucleus. Along with this, you have to remember the thyrotropin releasing hormone and the corticotropin releasing hormone is also secreted from the paraventricular nucleus. Then a very important nucleus, that is preoptic nuclei. Now, preoptic nuclei has got 2 parts, one is median, one is ventrolateral. The median preoptic nuclei, this is not medial, this is median preoptic nuclei. This is mainly playing a role in gonadotropin releasing hormones, mainly responsible for the reproductive behavior and the sexual functions, and also plays an important role in thermoregulation. So, anterior hypothalamus, specifically median preoptic nucleus, this plays an important role in thermoregulation when you are exposed to hot environment. Suppose I am exposed to hot environment, what will be the reaction in my body? I will be sweating, there will be vasodilation. So, these all features are done by the preoptic nucleus, median preoptic nucleus. Now, ventrolateral nucleus, this is the sleep promoting area. 2 areas you have to remember. One is the sleep promoting area which induces sleep, and one is the wake promoting area which induces arousal. So, sleep promoting area is the ventrolateral nucleus which is present in the anterior hypothalamus. Then anterior nuclei, again sexual behavior, thermoregulation. Suprachiasmatic nucleus is very important for maintaining the circadian rhythm or the biological clock in our body. Then the lateral hypothalamus or lateral nucleus of the hypothalamus, which is present in the anterior region, it is mainly known as the feeding center. You get hungry due to this activation of this center. This is lateral nucleus of the anterior region, that is the hunger center or the feeding center. So, when there is a feeding center, that means there will be also a satiety center. Satiety center means I have taken food and I am satisfied with what I have taken, I do not want to eat more. So, that is satiety center. So, this is present in tuberal region. So, this ventromedial nucleus, this is the satiety center, tuberal region. The lateral nucleus of hypothalamus present in the anterior region, that is the hunger center or the feeding center. Now, 2 more centers you have to remember in tuberal region, that is reward center and punishment center. What is reward center? Reward center means whenever you get anything good, you get good marks in your exam. So, that is a sort of reward for you. So, you get happy. The other opposite center is the punishment center. You feel whenever you are punished, you feel sad, you feel angry. So, reward center is mainly present specifically if the region is asked, it is medial forebrain bundle, and punishment center is present in the PAG, that is periaqueductal gray region of Sylvius. Now, these 2 regions you have to remember. Coming to the posterior region of hypothalamus, posterior region of hypothalamus, mammillary region, I told you 2 region you have to remember, one which induces sleep, the other which cause arousal, that is a wake promoting region. So, wake promoting region is present in the mammillary region, and here the neurotransmitter is histamine, there the neurotransmitter was GABA. And posterior hypothalamus is mainly responsible for thermoregulation to cold. That means whenever you are exposed to cold region, you will shiver. So, this shivering occurs because of activation of this posterior hypothalamus. Anterior hypothalamus, median preoptic nucleus was mainly for the thermoregulation when you are exposed to hot region. So, along with that, one important thing you have to remember is, if you stimulate this punishment center, that is periaqueductal gray region, what will happen? I will get angry. If you are constantly stimulating this PAG region, I will get angry on small things. So, this is known as rage. Okay. So, now normally in our body, this periaqueductal gray region has to be in a submissive form, it has to be inhibited, otherwise every time I will get angry. So, normally this is kept inhibited by cortex, higher functions, cortex, cerebral cortex inhibits this periaqueductal gray region. So, you do not get angry easily until and unless anybody pokes you. So whenever you remove this cerebral cortex, what will happen? Removal of the cerebral cortex will result in sham rage. Sham rage means with minute stimulus also you will get angry. Even if I ask your name, you will get angry. Even if I say you hello, you will get angry. So removal of the cortex results in sham rage, and if you don't want to get any reactions from a person, no reactions at all, you remove the hypothalamus. Obviously, the centers you remove, there won't be any reactions from the person, that is placidity. With this, we'll come to the major functions of hypothalamus. The major functions, first function is regulation of water balance. How blood volume is maintained in our body even after loss. So whenever there is, first condition is whenever there is hyperosmolarity, whenever there is, you are present walking in a desert, you are thirsty. So what happens? There is hyperosmolarity, that means there is increased sodium in your blood plasma. Okay, so whenever there is increased sodium, the osmoreceptors present in our body gets activated. Now, where are these osmoreceptors present? We have median preoptic region. We have, as I already told you, median preoptic nucleus. We have OVLT. This is organum vasculosum lamina terminalis, and you have another region, that is subfornical region. These are all present in front of the third ventricle. Okay, so these three regions serve to be as osmoreceptors. So whenever there is increased hyperosmolarity, there will be stimulation of this median preoptic and OVLT osmoreceptors, and it will stimulate the hypothalamus and cause drinking of water. That means it will stimulate the thirst center, that is anterior hypothalamus. Now the second feature is whenever there is heavy blood loss. Now blood also consists of water, maximum portion of the blood is water. So whenever there is huge blood loss in our body, say hemorrhage or road traffic accidents, what happens? There is hypovolemia. Now at that time, that is not sensed, that blood loss is not sensed by osmoreceptors. That time, another system in our body gets activated, that is renin-angiotensin system or RAS. Renin-angiotensin system or RAS. This system gets activated and there is formation of angiotensin 2. When this angiotensin 2 is formed, it will stimulate the subfornical region, which I already told you, the osmoreceptor present in front of the third ventricle. This subfornical region will cause activation of supraoptic nucleus. Now, if you remember the supraoptic nucleus present in the anterior region of the hypothalamus, this will cause secretion of antidiuretic hormone. What is the role of antidiuretic hormone? Water reabsorption. So, in this way, the blood volume will be restored. So, this regulation of water balance is very important, you have to remember. Coming to the next function, that is regulation of food intake, like when I will eat, when I feel hungry, or whether when not to feel hungry. So, regulation of food intake is dependent on two centers which I already told you. One is the feeding center, that is lateral nucleus of the hypothalamus, and the other one is the satiety center, that is ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus, which is present in the tuberal zone of the hypothalamus. Now, if this lateral feeding center, lateral nucleus of hypothalamus, or the feeding center is always active, that means I will always feel like eating. So this has to be inhibited. This has to be kept inhibited. Who will keep inhibited? This ventromedial nucleus or satiety center will keep this inhibited. The satiety center will keep the feeding center inhibited every time until and unless there is any other stimulus given. So how it keeps inhibited? This keeps inhibited from the glucose level, the plasma glucose level. So whenever plasma glucose level in our body is normal or increased, it will send signals to the satiety center with the help of GLUT4 receptors. Now the glucose is transported to the brain, that is the satiety center, with the help of GLUT4 receptors, which is insulin dependent. This is very important, insulin dependent. That means this receptor requires insulin to transport the glucose. So this glucose will get transported, the brain cells will sense, okay, there is a right amount of glucose is present, so this person does not need to take food. So it will inhibit the feeding center and the person will not take food. Now what will happen if you are starving? Okay, if you are in a hunger strike or if you are starving, if your plasma glucose level will fall. When your plasma glucose level will fall, this ventromedial or satiety center will not get any signal, the brain will receive, there is no glucose. So at that time, this inhibition will get removed. The lateral nucleus of the hypothalamus or the feeding center will get activated and you will take the food and you will have the urge to take the food. Now, what happens in case of diabetes mellitus? In case of diabetes mellitus, in case of diabetic patients, what happens? The person is having huge amount of glucose in the blood plasma. Hyperglycemia is present, but still the person eats. Why? Because in diabetes, what happens? There is insulin deficiency. And I told you this glucose is transported with the receptor GLUT4, which is insulin dependent. That means a diabetic person is not having insulin to transport this glucose. So in spite of having huge amount of, suppose I am diabetic, my blood sugar is very much high, my plasma is having huge ample amount of glucose, but still my brain cells, mainly the satiety center, is not sensing that glucose because I am not having insulin. So when there is no insulin, there is deficiency of insulin, the glucose cannot be transported to the brain cells, and so this ventromedial satiety center inhibition is not there over feeding center. So this feeding center will remain active and the person will eat in spite of having much amount of glucose in the blood plasma. So that's why feeding center is active. This the feature which happens in diabetic patients is polyphagia. They keep on eating intermittently, like frequent intervals of eating, they usually suffer from polyphagia. So this is the regulation of food intake, which is also governed by arcuate nucleus of hypothalamus. What is this nucleus? It is having two centers which balances the metabolism in our body. One is the POMC. POMC, the full form is pro-opiomelanocortin. Pro-opiomelanocortin, and other portion on the other hand we have neuropeptide Y or AGRP, that is agouti related peptide. Even if you don't remember AGRP, you should remember this is neuropeptide Y. So this POMC and neuropeptide Y maintains a balance. What balance? Whenever you will stimulate this POMC region, there will be decrease in the hunger. Okay, you won't be taking the food, but when if you stimulate the neuropeptide Y region, there will be increase in the food intake. In this way they regulate the metabolism. So what are the stimulators? The hunger is decreased, or POMC is stimulated mainly by leptin, insulin, amylin and dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Insulin and amylin, this is secreted from the pancreas, and leptin is present in the fat cells or the adipose tissue. So adipose tissue means, suppose I am very fat, so I will be having more adipose tissues. So the more adipose tissue means more fat cells, more leptin. So more leptin is there, so this will cause activation of POMC, and hence food intake will get decreased. On the other hand, ghrelin is secreted from the stomach, and these are cholecystokinin and incretins. These are secreted, these are the gut hormones. So this will stimulate the food intake. This will stimulate the neuropeptide Y region and cause intake of food. So in this way you can see there is a balance which is maintained in the food intake. So lateral hypothalamus, along with this you should always remember there is secretion of orexins. Orexins is also responsible for the feeding behavior as well as arousal mechanism. Now coming to the last portion, that is the last function of hypothalamus. This is maintaining the circadian rhythm. Now what is circadian rhythm? Circadian rhythm is the biological clock. Biological clock. Biological clock means there is a 24-hour cycle which goes on in our body. For example, if my body temperature usually gets raised at 6 p.m, then the next day also during the same time, 6 p.m, my body temperature will get raised. If you are sleeping usually around 10 p.m. at night, usually the next day also you will sleep around 10 p.m. So similarly this goes on. The blood pressure regulations, various hormone secretions, these are all maintained by this circadian rhythm, especially the sleep-wake cycle. So whenever this is hampered, you get jet lag. So the circadian rhythm, it is the biological clock, a 24-hour cycle. So how it is maintained? We'll see the sleep-wake cycle. Whenever there is light falling on the eyes, that signal is transported with the help of retinohypothalamic fibers to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. I told you the suprachiasmatic nucleus is present in the anterior region of the hypothalamus. It maintains circadian rhythm. The suprachiasmatic nucleus has got typical phenomenon of rhythmic discharge or pulsatile discharge. So this will cause activation of this pineal gland. This pineal gland will cause entrainment of 25-hour cycle to 24-hour cycle, which means normally in our body, without the intervention of suprachiasmatic nucleus, pineal gland with the help of melatonin maintains a 25-hour cycle. It does not maintain 24-hour cycle, but that 25-hour cycle is converted to 24-hour cycle, which is known as entrainment with the help of suprachiasmatic nucleus. That means if the suprachiasmatic nucleus gets destroyed, my 24-hour cycle will become again approximately 25-hour cycle, which is normal, which will cause various hindrances in my daily activities. So in this way, circadian rhythm or biological clock is maintained by suprachiasmatic nucleus. So the key points you have to remember in thalamus and hypothalamus, that thalamus plays an integral part of the motor loop of the brain, relay station for the somatic sensations, special senses, arousal, memory formations and language. When thalamus is damaged, not only thalamic functions are lost, but also the cortical functions are affected, because these are all interconnected. The cortex is intimately connected with the thalamus, and the hypothalamus forms an essential component in regulation of many homeostatic functions, visceral functions, endocrine functions, body rhythms, sleep-wake cycle, as well as reproductive functions. So this much you have to remember in thalamus and hypothalamus. Thank you.